24th meeting of the Directors of MSAD 27. Roll call.
Kelly.
Here.
Shannon Lugden.
Here.
Katie Lebasser.
Here.
David Susi is not here. Tanya Bazin.
Here.
Toby Jandro.
Here.
Sarah Ashley.
Here.
And our student reps are not here.
No adjustments to the agenda?
No adjustments.
Okay, we have a period of public participation on items in this agenda. Anybody from the public wish to be heard today? Take that as a no. Approval of minutes.
I motion to approve the minutes. A second.
Any discussion?
Who was the second?
Seeing no discussion. All those in favor? Opposed? Passes. Approval of financial statements.
Motion to approve. I'll second.
Sarah motions, Shannon seconds. Any discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor? Passes. Before we get to the presentations, I'm going to take something a lot of order that I should have done before we went into order, but Ben was nice enough to put these on the on our table. This is directed more at Kelly and Katie than anyone else, because we're the new people. These are all of the potential motions one could make at a board meeting. I will tell you that most of the time we don't use the right words, and that's okay. If there's something you need, make the motion, and if it's something we can do, we'll do it. And I'm gonna be pretty judicious and not say, no, you didn't use the right words, sorry. But just to give you some idea of what can happen and what can't, I think we've had to refer to Robert's Rules of Order, never? Never. But if we have to, we will. That's what we're supposed to be following. I find that for the most part, the board is able to operate without getting into real technical approaches. But if you feel the need, if there's something that you want to talk about, or if there's something you think should happen, just use plain language and I will help interpret it. So. All right, back to the agenda. We have some presentations.
Our first presentation was the CHS Travel Club trip approval. Mr. Coletta, do you know if Mr. Dorman's here to present that?
Mr. Dorman right now is coming back from Washington, D.C.
Oh.
And he took our Quiz Bowl team there, and they did really well. They had a great weekend educationally and with the Quiz Bowl. We had one student as an individual, finished 55th. That's nationwide, so it was quite a contest. I put some of those pictures on Facebook, by the way, if you had a chance to see them. So, so we're going to Los Angeles. We're leaving on, I believe it's the 21st. Yeah, it'll be the 21st day after school ends, and we'll be gone for a week. There's all kinds of different activities. It's, Mr. Dorman, if you ever had a chance to travel with him, likes to do, educational things, but taking cultural things as well. One of the things we'll be doing is going to the Palomar Observatory, which is a space telescope there up on the hills of LA, which is going to be one of my favorite highlights there. We'll be going to Hollywood Boulevard, walking, through the Hollywood region. Go to the California Science and History Museum, Los Angeles Zoo, Broadway show, the life story of Tina Turner. We're going to be seeing a Los Angeles Dodgers game as well. All told, there'll be about 46 students going on it, and the students all paying their way. So it's a big trip, and I think there's at least 6 adults going as well, including myself, Mr. Dorman, Mr. Chenard, some parents. So that's all I have to do on that.
I've taken 4 trips with Mr. Dorman, and I've done the LA trip. and it's amazing how well organized it is, how seamless it is. Mr. Dorman will go out in the morning while everyone is still waking up and eating breakfast, and he'll go like get tickets for all the day's events. So everything's lined up, and we're not ever waiting in line. Sometimes he'll go out on his own, leaving the other 5 chaperones with the students so he can go make arrangements with, said restaurant that we're going to or whatever. So he's always thinking ahead, always planning ahead, and it's very, very well organized and well detailed. And because Mr. Dorman does all the work for the planning and doesn't hire an outside firm to do all the planning, the kids get the best price possible for this type of trip. Do you know what the cost was this year?
I think it was $1,200. Yeah, the airfare has gone up considerably, and so are hotels and everything. So it's more expensive than it had been in the past. But I'll get
Still not.
Yeah, I'll get a better dollar value for that. But I know that every students have been raising their own money for that, so we'll get a more definitive price.
Awesome. We do have board policy that says anytime that our school has a trip outside of state that's overnight, it requires board approval, which is why this was taken to tonight for said approval, if you should so desire to approve it.
I make a motion to approve.
I'll second.
Any discussion?
I think anytime we can offer students the opportunity to experience areas.
My kids are both in college, they still talk about Mr. Dorman's trips.
I'm gonna take one of them one of these days.
Any other discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor?
And for our second presentation, we have some guests here, and I'm going to recognize Melanie Poirier, who's going to lead the discussion. Melanie, you can share to the screen. It's the CHS library, I believe, if you have slides. Essentially, Melanie's going to talk to you about the programming at Chippy. It's something that we haven't had the opportunity to talk regularly with the board, and we felt it was a great opportunity, especially with some new board members, to kind of bring everyone full circle around what's going on at that building and what's happening. So Melanie, whenever you're ready, we'll turn it over to you. This is where Stacey's supposed to tell jokes on. This joke is Stacey.
I can show you pictures of my 2-month-old grandbaby. I could do that for about 4 hours if you'd like. It's not working, it's not connected.
Is she not authenticated, maybe?
Well, you know what, Mel, if you want to share it with me, I can put up your slides from my computer.
In case you're wondering, this would be my luck, so that happens to me.
Okay, should be all set. It was up there, wasn't it?
That update on the cost of the trip was $1,800.
Okay, thank you. Oh, there it is.
Thank you.
So good evening, members of the board and community. My name is Melanie Poirier. I am the director of the MSAD 27 Early Learning Center. Some of you may be asking, what is the Early Learning Center? And that's kind of why I wanted to take a little bit of your time tonight. The program used to be called Chippy, which stood for Center and Home-Based Instructional Program for Parents and Youth. It was primarily a family literacy program funded initially by the Barbara Bush Foundation. It was an adult education program that supported struggling parents to finish high school and pursue a degree or a workforce certification like a CNA certificate, while also providing them childcare and guidance around child development and parenting. This has been a great program and had much to offer for families over the years, but has fewer active members in recent years due to many factors. However, we do still offer a wide range of family literacy services, minus the in-home services, to qualifying families, which includes childcare while attending classes. So I want you to take everything I just told you about Chippy and kind of forget it for a little bit, and I'd like to introduce you to the MSAD 27 Early Learning Center and my staff. So let's get to know each other. This is the MSAD 27 Early Learning Center logo. My staff includes myself, Melanie Poirier, the director, Helen Berry, who is the Early Childhood Education Aide, Selena McBride, who is also an Early Childhood Education Aide. I do have a staff member present. Her name is Jolene Gardner. She is also an Early Childhood Education Aide. I have Olivia Michaud, who is also an aide, and Faith Wilson, who kind of doubles as Stacey's VUCE secretary, as well as my aide when she's needed to cover. So we are now officially called the MSAD 27 Early Learning Center, and as you can see, we are diligently working on changing and updating the image as well as the name of the center. This is a work in progress. The center is staffed with professional, qualified individuals as determined by Maine State Licensing who are passionate about early years education. This is an educational center. We've made quite a few changes and have a lot of ideas for more to come. We've added and updated our teaching equipment and toys. We are working on giving the center a fresh look that is safe, sanitary, and child appropriate. And for the first time ever, the center is open to the public. This started about 2 years ago during a project we worked on during the COVID pandemic. This includes our staff becoming certified to offer subsidized childcare tuition for those families who qualify, a service which is especially valuable with our lower income and family literacy families. We do have our own Google page as well as a Facebook page, which has generated a lot of inquiries and questions about possible open placements for children in our area and in our community. The need for this type of care is so great in the community and all over the country as well, and we currently do have a waiting list of children. At the Early Learning Center, you will see learners actively engaged all day long. This is what makes us different from just a daycare. We do not, so quote unquote, babysit children. Our program is structured around the children. We believe in a holistic approach where we care about the whole child, not just from a cognitive standpoint, but from their health and well-being also. We do have a very structured routine with a curriculum. We begin working on developmental milestones as early as 6 weeks of age and continue through until we do have children that can come to us up to 8 years old. We serve 3 age groups that flawlessly transition into each other. Our infants move to toddlers, our toddlers move to early learners, and then eventually our early learners become active participants in the MSAD 27 district. We have been told numerous times that learners who attend this program are markedly more prepared for school when they get there. Out of the 14 students that we currently have enrolled, 7 of them are staff children. And in the fall, we will be adding at least 2 more staff children to our roster. It is a convenient place for staff to drop off their children, understand that they'll be safe and nearby, and know that we mostly follow the same schedule as the MSAD 27 staff. At the center, we are a team, and that's why it works. We not only work on preschool skills for school, but we also work on life skills. Some examples, we work on independence skills, getting dressed on your own, manners, table manners, as well as social and emotional regulation skills. We do believe that it does take a village to raise a child. We are in constant contact with our parents, and we offer suggestions to our parents when they're struggling or have questions about health, learning and cognitive issues, body training, dressing, teeth brushing, hygiene, regulating sleep, eating skills, food exploration, and many more. We also do our best to connect families with community resources when they are available. This is a hallmark service for a family literacy program. We recently did have a child who was thought to have a hearing issue and delayed speech. We connected the family with the right resources, and now the child is receiving speech service at a very young age. If a child's basic needs are not met, we cannot expect them to learn. It's not fair. So often with what we do, we hear, it takes a special person to do what you do, or I couldn't do what you do all day. And for my staff and I, we enjoy it. It's not just a job. Working with children is definitely our passion, and once you start, it becomes addicting. Our children are the reason we do what we do, and I do encourage you all to reach out to Don LaBelle, Stacey, Sierra, or myself to schedule a time when you can come in to see what we do. We'd like to show you around. So that's pretty much it. Here's our Facebook page and our Google page link. And thank you so much for your time.
Thank you.
Jolene also drives a bus.
And if you have any questions, both Peter, Karen, and I are here for any historical background for the ones of you who are new and why we even have a daycare here within the school system.
Is the price different for the teachers that work here compared to the outside
No.
folks?
No, we have a chart that's designed by Department of Human Services, and it's based on county, and it's also based on age. So babies, infants we charge more for infants, and the older the child, the less the cost. But it's based on that Department of Human Services chart that is also used for subsidy. So those parents who qualify for subsidy, that's the cost that we use.
How many children do you have there at any time?
We currently have 14 enrolled,
Okay.
and most of them are full-time students. We do have 3 that are part-time, so we have 11 every day. The other 3 kind of rotate on when they're coming, and then in the fall, we're adding 2, possibly up to 4 more.
Our center is licensed for up to 50 children, but in order to have 50 children, we'd have to double our staff because of staff ratios to children. So right now, it depends on how the children are aged within to know when we're full.
Yeah.
But typically, it's around 20 kids. 18 to 20 kids would be full with the staff that we have.
Now, does the funding you receive come close to covering the cost of operation?
Well, in the past, the school has fully funded the family literacy program because it was part of adult education. It served only the parents who were attending adult ed and their children, and we were not a licensed daycare at that point. But about, I want to say 5 years ago, it was just before I came here and replaced in the adult ed director position. The state was kind of, for a couple of years, we're like, no, you have to be licensed. Well, no, we're not public. We're just doing it for our students. But eventually they said, no, you have to be licensed. So once licensing happened, the way we ran our business had to be very, very, very different because now we had rules, lots and lots and lots of rules. And so that's when we got subsidy. That's when we got certified to offer our subsidy. So the parents all pay to come, and even the family literacy students who are taking classes with us will often qualify for subsidy. And sometimes they have to pay a parent fee, but most of the time they don't have to pay a parent fee. Does all of that completely cover the cost? We're still experimenting with that. We're not sure. This is really new for us. And the district is still covering a partial cost because we're still serving family literacy families. Not at the rate we were, but we're still serving them. So we're figuring out how that's all going to work together.
Yeah, I was just curious because of, it's an incredible program. I know childcare is a real issue here in the community, and if you can ramp up, I'd be curious. That's why the question is if it's going to, if it involves having to do a lot of fundraising outside of your program, I can
Well,
understand there being
the other
hesitance.
thing that's been unique for us is because of COVID, we've got money. We've got all kinds of COVID money for daycare, so we've been able to upgrade a lot of the equipment. We purchased a shed for storage. We have bought PD. These people are doing PD above and beyond.
Mhm.
I will tell you, it's above and beyond, because there's no time during the school day to take a break and do PD. And I don't know how long we're gonna get all this funding. Plus, I think it was back in February, they made it a law that all childcare staff are getting an extra $200 above and beyond their salary from the state of Maine. And they could work 8 hours a week, or they could work 2 hours a week, or they could work 40 hours a week. It doesn't matter. If they work even a little bit, they get that $200 every month above and beyond. It's not a lot, but it can help.
That's great.
It can be a car payment or maybe diapers, something.
Groceries for a day.
Yeah.
What time do you open and close for the childcare?
7:30 to 4.
Or do you guys provide meals on
The
site
school
here?
provides
The school
meals.
provides meals.
All the children have to fill out a lunch form. All the families fill out a lunch form, just like every other family in the district.
So you said you're licensed for up to 50, but right now, staffing is what limits you to the
Well,
20-ish?
I don't think we've ever had 50 children. We're licensed up to 50 for the space,
Yeah,
but we would have to have 12 staff. You know, there's no way.
so I guess
Yeah.
that's what my question was, is it staffing? Because you said you have a wait list. So it's a staffing that keeps you from growing and not the need of the community?
Yes.
Yeah, okay.
Yes, especially with, I don't know, Melanie, you might have this number better than I, but I know that at least 2 to 3 just in our community childcare centers have closed. And the state is getting even more strict with the rules and expectations, if that's even possible to imagine. It's very difficult to keep up with their requirements.
Even the staffing level that they're at now was hard to achieve.
Exactly.
Mhm.
In
It was
Aroostook
very hard to
County, it's
achieve.
disgusting.
Yeah, if you read my update in the admin report, we were short-staffed for quite a while. My secretary was pretty much working there full-time. I didn't have a secretary because she was always subbing, there was somebody out. And there was a lot of, COVID and RSV, and we have to close, and parents were not happy. But we can't open if you're sick, you know what I mean? And so we're glad that all of that is behind us, thankfully. And we're really much more careful about if a child shows up and they have a fever, they need to go back home with mom or dad. It just is what it is. We have to keep everyone else safe. So we're getting better at prevention in that area. But yeah, to answer your question, definitely staffing. And this, I think, is the most staff we've ever had since this existed.
Thank you. Any other questions? Thank you again.
Superintendent. I just have a couple of updates. Last meeting, I told you all about the Comprehensive School Threat Assessment Guideline, the CSTAG training. Last Friday, both of our school teams participated in the Level 2 training. That was from 9 o'clock a.m. to 1 o'clock p.m., and they didn't give us a spare second in that time. So we are all fully trained with Level 1 and Level 2 training. The Level 2 training was pretty interactive, where they would give us a scenario of a student, and all the scenarios they gave were real scenarios that have happened somewhere across the country. And as school-based teams, we were put out in breakout rooms, and we had to figure out, using the tools that they provided us, what kind of a threat was it? First of all, was it a threat? What kind of a threat was it? And what would the school's response to that threat be? So it was a good interactive training on the nuts and bolts of working with the CSTAG training equipment, the forms, the documents, and we're just going to have a follow-up as school-based teams to kind of align ourselves with best practices according to this model. But I think we're in a much better place, and we're feeling much more confident in our response to threats and how this team approach will help make us have us making better decisions for our students and the safety of our staff and students. Any questions on that?
Can you refresh my memory? This was a threat to the school body and as well as a threat to the student themselves?
It could be self-harm, a threat of self-harm or
Yeah.
threats to others. It could be something as basic as, threatening to fight somebody behind the building after 3 p.m., or it could be somebody making a threat that I'm going to do some very bad things to the school. So it's all kinds of levels of threats, and it's how to, basically go through the tools and, identify, was it a threat, or was it just somebody seeking attention, or, so you go through all of those steps, and they provided us with a wonderful, they were able to kind of present it in a 3-tiered model, which we understand very well at schools for how we address learning issues and that type of thing. So using that 3-tiered model, they provided some wonderful resources on how to put a behavior plan or a safety plan together in the event that we do have a student that does have a substantiated threat that's serious.
Have all the teachers done the threat assessment?
No, just, so in your notes, you'll see the school-wide teams. Fort Kent Elementary, you have Mr. Anderson, Kathy Daigle, Marion Bouchard, Rebecca Michaud, Robbie Netto, and myself. And essentially, they want the teams to have varying perspectives. So that's why you have an administrative perspective, you have a guidance counselor perspective, a social worker, you have a school nurse perspective. So you have all those varying different degrees of expertise. And then the high school is Mr. Doucette, Mr. Coletta, Sandria Daigle, Monique Michaud, Tammy Bernier, and myself. We're also going to have discussions about bringing in a police officer, because we work so closely with the police department. So if we have a threat that we think the local PD might have information on, a student, their family, that type of thing, we may bring an officer on board during the threat assessment to kind of get that feedback from them as well. We also have our school psychologist who we can pull in at any time, Manuel Martinez, who can offer some suggestions as well. So you have your core team, and then you can bring in expertise as you need it, as you're making that determination.
Is there any plan to have teachers involved in this training?
We might have teachers that come on a case-by-case basis, especially if a teacher has a tried and true relationship with a student that has been able to. So if teacher the previous year has been able to mitigate a lot of behaviors from that student, now in the new year the new teacher is really struggling and threats are happening, we may bring in teacher expertise in order to help inform the team a little bit better. But that again would be add-on people, not from the core teams.
I was thinking teachers too, just because they see the students
Absolutely.
so much more than
Absolutely.
the core team.
So
Yeah.
how would that currently work? Like if the teacher feels a threat of any sort, whether they're out on the playground and they hear about the fight or whatever, how does that work? Are they instructed to contact somebody to
Yep.
evaluate?
Yeah, so we're, everybody that works at school is a mandated reporter, and a threat would be something that every school employee would have to report out. Whether or not they report it to your school administrator or they go to the guidance office, they're gonna report it to somebody, and that's gonna initiate the threat assessment immediately. 9 out of 10 times, they're notifying their school admin right away for that type of thing.
Perfect.
Mostly a guy with a blue shirt in the room.
That's all.
There's a lot of that. And we have a policy on police notification. Is this going to run alongside our policy on police intervention, or is it going to supersede?
So with threat assessments, whenever the team has, we just learned this, well, I just learned this, maybe the others knew this, but whenever you have determined there is a threat, anything under FERPA for protection of students is kind of null and void at that point in time, because safety takes precedent over confidentiality. So at that point in time, we would look to be in alignment with school policy, but we would also have to be obligated to make sure that staff and students are safe. So it kind of supersedes policy at that when it's at that type of a level.
Well, and for that purpose, do we have a definition of threat?
In the program, we have definitions of a transient threat, a substantiated threat, and then substantiated has serious substantiated, which is like the most severe threat. So
I'm thinking if we're going to do this, we should have a policy that reflects it. Because words are important, right?
Mhm.
And there's a threat, and there's a threat. And if we're gonna not follow policy because of an extra policy.
Yeah.
That's a problem. I think we maybe want to put something together that way we're clear for any future generations on what a threat is.
And I could look to see if the program actually has recommendations for policy around this.
That'd be helpful, because it always makes me nervous when we have policies that aren't written.
Right. Yep.
Do you have key words, like something like the hospital, when there's a threat, they don't just go on the monitor and say threat, it's like code blue or code something, do you have those?
So I think I know what you're asking. For us, in a response to any, so let's say, heavens forbid, there was an active shooter. We're not, our training is with ALICE protocols, so ALICE prepares us for various responses. If you can evacuate, that is a response. If you have to isolate in place and shelter, that's another response. If you have to prepare to attack or defend, that's another response. But in the training, they train us to never use code because it's unclear to various people. So always use plain language in order to get messages out to the school community. So we have cameras everywhere in this building, and if we have eyes on somebody who is potentially harmful in the school, we would be on the intercom telling our staff and students exactly where to avoid, where not to go, where to evacuate to, that type of things. Always use clear language, never codes.
Okay.
Yeah.
The world, I know.
Yes. I agree. But I'll look into policy. Any questions on that? Along those lines, my next item is safety information for families, and this came from the previous chair, Keith, who was just looking to see if we could be a little more proactive as a district with regards to providing information to our families about specifically what he was looking for was gun safety, and this came on the heels of I believe an elementary school student downstate bringing a firearm to school. Luckily, nothing happened, but they did discover that an elementary student had brought a firearm to school. And so at that point in time, I reached out to the Maine Gun Safety Coalition, and again, we know how political the gun debate can be, and that's not what we were talking about, Keith and I. It wasn't to debate, whether or not a family should own firearms or not. That's not our position to navigate, but it's more about how to pass on information to our families, because we do believe that's a family thing to educate, their children on, but how to pass on information to families about simple things like, locking up guns and access to gun locks if you don't have a storage, facility, that type of thing, and working with your kids on, just those talking points. From that connection that I made with Lynn Ellis of the Gun Safety Coalition, she connected me with Kathleen McFadden, who is a Maine volunteer with a national program called Be Smart. And she shared some information. I believe I shared the links in your notes with the electronic for you guys to take a look at. Lynn and Kathleen said, hey, we're willing to go up to the Valley and talk with your school boards about what we can offer from Be Smart, about, timed information that goes out to families. This is a program that is run nationally. And if you'd like to pass a resolution as a board saying that we're going to educate our families, you go on their list of schools that are doing that, and we would be taking a proactive step to potentially keeping our students safe. I said I don't know if there's appetite for that, and said in fact the board chairman that initiated this conversation is no longer on the board. So I guess for me it's what are your thoughts about that kind of awareness? Do we want to stay out of that realm and not go there? Do we want to get more information from Lynn and Kathleen, or are we on board? So I guess I'm just deferring to the board to see what you guys think about that.
So I checked out the link, and I thought it did a really good job of not getting political. It was simply, let's keep everybody safe. We don't want kids to use guns, and we don't want the guns that are in our home to be used by somebody that's not authorized. I'd be very interested in having them come talk to us.
What kind of price tag is tied to that, I guess? Do you know?
No price tag.
When I reviewed it, my perception about it, especially reading that, if the school takes on this initiative, it's great. I'm not against it by any means. I don't think it will be received appropriately and by the proper people. I truly believe that the children that we have in our school, the parents are taking a lot of responsibility, and it's the relatives that we kind of have to worry about, that where they're obtaining these access to the guns. And I thought this was more perhaps like a town initiative rather than a school initiative, in my perspective. I don't know.
That's interesting. That's a good point, actually. It's always that catch-22, right?
Right.
You want to bring awareness to something, but you don't want to set off red flags that the school is taking a position on A or B, because the school's not. The school's only position is, let's be safe.
Yes, correct.
But perception is everything.
I'm with you. I think, I mean, when I was in Wallagrass, I talked to the former town manager about just like, why don't you just give away gun locks for people who want them, right? Like, that's so apolitical. Here, put them on your guns, whatever. And it seems like it would come back. I mean, I don't want to start giving out gun locks at this place. That feels wrong.
I feel like it's a massive concept. And then to have the parents take the responsibility to educate the relatives, realistically, I just don't feel like that's going to happen. You know what I mean? Because it's not.
One thing I was clear on is we're not going to have guest speakers come talk to our students about these type of things. We're not going to be the parent in this, because that's way too political and way too much that I don't want to put us in that shining light. So I know that for sure. We're not bringing a program into school for the kids. We're not having our teachers talk to them about anything. We're sticking to math, reading, writing. I mean, that's what we do. This is more about, how do we get this type of information out to our communities? And maybe Katie's, hit it on the head. Maybe it's passing that on to the town managers, who maybe can then say, yeah, we're willing to take on this initiative as a town.
What about Valley Unified?
Or Valley Unified.
Or is Madawaska, Frenchville, and Seneca doing anything with this?
You're the first to hear my pitch. But it will be pitched to the others as well.
Shall we revisit it after it's been
We can do that.
viewed by all
We can do that.
schools?
What do you say, Sarah?
I agree. I think it would be better coming from not the school. I mean, on one hand, you think, what if something were to happen, a few weeks down the line, you go, well, we could have, would this have, you know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
Would this have done anything? There's always that, I'd rather do too much than not enough, but again, political climate, I think it would be better coming from the communities, from the rec department, they're all about families. I think that's a really great idea.
If they don't take it on, I think we should. Maybe we can revisit it then. What the page is, as I dug down in, there was a lot of information on how to, when your kid's going somewhere else, even if it was family, and just saying, hey, do you have pets? Because my kid's got an allergy. Oh, by the way, how do you take care of your guns? I mean, just that simple. But just so you know, we have guns here at my house, and they're locked up this way, and out of sight or whatever it is. And so I think, to your point of we shouldn't do nothing.
Yes.
That let's revisit it and see if somebody else, if the community as a whole will take it on.
Right. And
Awesome, let them.
Agreed, and maybe it's not the town, maybe it's the hospital,
Maybe it's our PTO.
maybe it's our PTO, maybe it's the
I think I'd
police
be interested
department.
to hear
Yeah.
what the towns say. You mind reaching out to them
No,
between now and then?
absolutely.
And if all the towns say we're not interested, I'm with Shannon. If they're not gonna do it, we should.
Somebody has to.
Yeah.
In reading through the website, there was various policies, though, that they suggested the school board which would directly impact though how we handle this going forward. So is that something that we're also gonna be looking into if we do take it on as a school board or the school, that we'd have to adopt all these policies and implement them?
We'd have to keep us safe as well, so
Yeah.
yeah.
So I feel like that's a lot.
Will
So-
each town have to take it on, or will it just be the,
I think we make the offer and see who's interested.
I think that makes the most sense. We'll know in a month how everybody feels.
Yeah. Then you'll also hear back from me on how Madawaska responded in 33, and we can just revisit.
Tanya?
I agree.
Perfect.
Okay. Last thing I have was to talk to you about our life skills programming here at MSAD 27. If you recall, a couple meetings ago, we had announced the retirement of Jean Martin, who runs one of our life skills program here at CHS. And we told you at that time, we're gonna look to try to reallocate staffing in order to manage that. So I'm gonna have Jill Kelly give you an update on that status, but at the same time, I think just sharing some general information about what our life skills programs look like at FKES here, who qualifies for that type of programming, and all the nuts and bolts about our life skills in both buildings. So Jill, if you don't mind, I'm gonna defer to the expert.
So it's not very black and white. So typically, students who qualify are students with intellectual disability or like more severe autism. But even then, you don't automatically qualify. So what we try to do for all students is look at least restrictive environments. So students should be in the mainstream classes as much as possible, and whenever, they can be successful. And if when the students struggle, we deal with this a lot, just trying to figure out what's going to work. We provide accommodations, we look at all different types of accommodations. When that, we might meet again and say, okay, this still isn't working. We can look even here at Valley River Middle School, the high school, looking at, okay, we want to expect meeting a standard of a 2 level instead of a 2.5. So we really work hard to keep them with their peers as much as possible. Every once in a while, we have students who it's still not working. Like we say it's adversely affecting that child, so they're not getting anything out of class at that point. We might say that when we look at the standard, they need something more than that. They need something to meet. It's always unique and based on that IEP team decision. So we're always meeting as a team, and it's looking at, okay, we need to meet this child's individualized needs. This isn't working. They're not understanding global, whatever it is, like whatever the concepts are. If we can't get them to meet it at their level, then we might look at life skills. At the high school, junior high here, we have a total of 8 students in the life skills classroom, and they're not in there, they might not be in there the whole day. So they might go in for one class, or they might go in for science and social, language arts, math, science, and social studies. Some students only go in there for language arts, or depending what their needs are. So we're still always trying to look at keeping them with their peers when possible. At the elementary school, we have a total of 6 students in that life skills classroom with IRIS schema. And the needs are more unique, I would say. Each student in that classroom has a one-on-one, and it's more for safety reasons, because we have students who could wander off with higher, more severe autism. Some who do not, can't struggle to express themselves and their needs. Let's see what else. I have a bunch of, okay. So sometimes we look at questions like to determine who needs life skills. We might say, do they need adaptive behavior in order to learn live independently eventually? Like some students at the elementary school might be like help with toileting and learning to use the bathroom. A few years back we put a bathroom in that life skills just to help them, teaching students to become more independent in toileting. Let's see. So we're always looking at what materials or what do they need in the mainstream, or what do they need in the life skills classroom. And as far as the funding, it's paid the same way that the resource rooms are funded. So it's paid through special education, but when a student needs any specialized equipment, I'm trying to think of what it could be, like a standing frame or something that would help that child, that particular child, we can use a local entitlement grant, which is a special education grant, to help pay for anything, especially for a certain child that might come in with a need, whether it's a wheelchair or whatever the child needs. So it's really looking at the IEP team to make those decisions, but we really work hard to say, sometimes we'll have a teacher say, I really think this child should be in the life skills room for science, and we'll look at every possible solution. Okay, can we give extra support? Can we give more individualized time? Can we give more accommodations? Just trying to keep them with their peers is the most important thing, because they learn so much from peers and discussions, and so. And once in a while, we have somebody ask, like, oh, my child wants to go in there and learn how to cook. Well, it's not home ec. That's not the purpose of it. But what we do have, and some kids walk by and would really like to take that class, whatever that class is. So it's cute to see. Is there anything that I made on this? Do you have any questions about either? I mean, you can always stop by and visit too.
Life skills is kind of a misnomer, because I would think of sewing buttons and making macaroni. And it doesn't sound like that's what's happening.
That's more home ec, I think.
I know, but life skills isn't exactly, feels euphemistic for what's happening in that classroom.
Yeah, we've even had students, like, part of their day was like brushing their teeth, combing their hair. It depends on what their needs are. And for some kids, it might not be that. It might be like a child, safety-wise, who right now, or emotionally, or there's different reasons. But we really look at what else have we tried, and we've tried all other avenues first, because we want them to be with their mainstream peers, and because that is much more restricted.
So is this program mandated by the state to have something like this? I mean, how does this,
Right.
is it a necessary place, for students who can't be mainstreamed to certain places that were said we have to find a place where they can be?
I guess, especially where our district, we're trying to meet the needs of everyone. Our out-of-district placement, so say we have a child with really severe needs, would be an hour away and very expensive. So we really work hard to keep kids in our district, and we really work hard to make a program that works for them. So,
I can't say.
Does that help?
I can't say that being superintendent of 3 school districts, one that does not have a life skills program, when a student needs that programming, the family will seek it outside of district placement, specific to what the needs are. So we do have a student from one of our districts that goes to another for programming because they don't offer it at their school.
Yeah, I'm just trying to wrap my mind around where it fits and everything. I had a parent approach me, just asked questions, and I legitimately didn't know. And I'm just kind of interested in where it fits into the grand scheme of things. So we have a student who has an IEP, and let's say they can't meet their particularized needs in the IEP in the mainstream classroom, they would go to life skills, and at life skills work on those same needs, but on an individualized basis?
Right, and it could be for math, if they're not understanding the concepts, and even the resource room might be algebra, because they're meeting the standards like everyone else. And for some students, that doesn't make much sense. They're gonna need to learn how to count money, basic change, using measuring. I mean, they really more.
So it's targeted transitional skills, correct?
Right, to do it independently someday.
Right, so that after high school, they're able to go into independent living, maybe supported employment, those kinds of things. And it's targeted directly to the child's transitional plan, which is developed no later than grade 9, I believe.
Right.
And that is developed relative to their skills, their needs, and their goals.
Thank you.
Sorry.
That makes, because I'm trying to figure out why you would call something that's not life skills, but it is life skills. Okay. I don't like euphemisms. So that makes more sense. If it's a targeted transitional plan, like you're saying, Peter, I can see what you're saying, where you're having students are going to need certain skills when they go into the community, and absent them not learning algebra, being able to count change when they go to the store and make sure they get what they need done is important.
And it might be, like, even at the elementary school, like Miss Iris works on, like, okay, she said hello to you, what do you need to say? And having them turn around and say hello, like, for some students, that's where we're at, in like using utensils to, you know what I mean? Oh, but make sure you use your you know what I mean? It's really, sometimes it's things that we don't always think of, but you actually have to teach students some skills sometimes, so that's,
And is it an individualized program for each student?
yes, absolutely.
How long are they in that classroom for? Is it an all-day?
It does, if some students join their peers for it depends on their needs. So as much as we can have them with their peers, some students are. It might be one period they're in that classroom, but for some students it is, you know, they really struggle outside of that classroom, so. But she even goes down, they run errands, they deliver messages, they might go to library, they might go to, so whatever they can be successful in. It might be music, with some students music doesn't work very well, so it all depends.
Now, along those lines, a lot of high schools are talking about bringing back a home ec-like program to get their students life and career ready. So you see these programs popping up in different high schools where you have to take a freshman year course on balancing a checkbook and sewing a button, all those things that you consider we learned in home ec. Schools are bringing that back, and I think in our strategic plan data that we're collecting, I think you're going to see people talk about that as a hot topic.
We won't be able to call it life skills. We won't know what to say.
Life skills.
They actually have those classes, because I won't out any of my kids, but I almost considered putting a few of them in there, my own personal children. They're called adulting classes, and they learn those basic skills, like how to change a tire, and so.
It's important. I hear that comment a lot.
Yep. What's a credit card? What's interest?
Well, yeah, exactly.
Oh, it's fine. It'll work itself out, right?
Free money.
What's 24%? Thank you so much, Joe.
Yeah.
Thanks, Joe. Other than that, under superintendent, you have your administrator reports, one from Mr. Doucette and one from Mr. Anderson, from AnnMarie, Guerrette, and from Stacey Sear. They are, 3 out of 4 are here to answer your questions.
Anybody have any questions of the administrators? Thank you for the report, folks. I think we're on to committee business.
Under committee business, we have policy committee. We did meet as a policy committee last week to go over these policies, and I've broken them up into 3 sections. 3 sections? Yep, 3 sections. The first is review-only policies. So you have in front of you a review of policy BID, board member compensation and expenses. I've reached out to Maine School Management on some clarification on the gracious stipend of $25 that you get per meeting, seeing if this board could enact policy to increase that. And actually, the $25 is set in statute, and it's the maximum allowable under state statute. So unfortunately, my attempt to get you a raise fell short.
Go back to selling Tupperware.
So that being said, that cannot be adjusted. And the reason this was brought up, excuse me for speaking out of turn, is because I work with another school committee that is a committee of the town, so the Madawaska School Committee. The statutes for school committees is totally different than what it is for school boards, and they can actually have a vote in their annual meeting to align their stipends to whatever the town selectmen get, or the town council. So I was wondering why Madawaska School Committee members were getting X amount for stipends, and you were getting, you and 33 were getting this, and so now I figured out why. So this is a review only, and I'll be asking you to consider the adoption of the review. The second one is board member insurance, BIE. Again, just another review. There's no recommended changes. It basically says that your professional liability insurance and legal fees will be provided by MSAD 27 in the event that you need it. And I don't think we should change that at all. And the last review would be CC, Administrative Organization Plan. And I'm going to provide you later with an updated organizational chart. But the review of CC itself does not recommend any changes. It basically says, you know, we're gonna follow the chain of command, however it works according to our district. So with that being said, with these 3 reviews, I think we could, with your permission, approve the review of those 3 policies.
Anybody want to make a motion?
I'll make the motion.
Would you like to make this motion?
I'd like to make the motion to approve BID, BIE, and CC.
Second.
Shannon? Any discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor? Passes.
There are a few policies that we reviewed that we found to be unnecessary and are recommending removal. The first one is board review of regulations. The board reserves the right to review administrative rules at its discretion. We have another policy that we're going to bring to you that's under superintendent that has this language under the superintendent that the board can review administrative procedures at any request, so we really don't need this policy to say it again. And the second one is administration and policy absence. Again, that is under superintendent where I am tasked with making decisions administratively. We only borrowed a little bit of language from this where it says whenever possible the superintendent will contact the chairperson and available board members before taking action. So that was added, and you'll see it a little bit to the superintendent policy. So with your permission, we'd like to remove those 2 policies.
All right, I'll make a motion to approve the removal of policies CHB and CHD.
Second.
Any discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor?
And then the remaining policies that you have are first read, so we're not going to take action tonight. It's just for you to review what the proposed changes are. I'm going to just kind of highlight the major changes. The first one is JLCD, Administration of Medication to Students. And you'll see 1, 2, 3, 4 paragraphs down, you'll see like a light green font in that 4th and 5th paragraph that is talking about adding some language around around EpiPens as a life-saving protocol and Narcan as a life-saving protocol in the event that we have students who need those type of medications. And our nurses are trained now in both those life-saving protocols. So with approval of this policy, we would essentially enter an agreement with a standing order with Northern Maine Medical Center for a school physician to provide our nurses with these life-saving measures. You'll also see the addition of Appendix 1 and Appendix 2 at the end of this policy, which has the state of Maine's life-threatening allergy protocol for EpiPens and their main to this. So our nurses have been asking, begging to please have this so that in the event that they need to administer these life-saving protocols, they would have it.
Ben, we had talked about potentially asking to approve this tonight because, you know, there's life-saving measures in here. We'd also talked about, I think there's another policy, right, that allows us, the superintendent and the nurses, to use it even if it's not approved until it gets approved. We talked about that as well, as I should have bring that.
Well, I see the note and it says, although this is the first read of the policy, we're asking for an emergency passage for right now until we can get it passed after the.
So we have a policy that allows you to suspend the regular adoption of policies in the event of an emergency that you need to pass one. So what Sarah is asking is, can we adopt this as an emergency policy so that we don't have to go through another month of waiting for a second read?
What's our current policy on like, what have we been doing up until now?
It's, currently, it's whoever has a prescription for EpiPen, they would, be allowed to have it. We have nothing on Narcan, so these would, essentially, all we're adding is that 4th paragraph and that 5th paragraph. Everything else is what's currently in your policy.
But are we currently purchasing EpiPens and, restocking and all that?
We're not, no, and we're not purchasing, and we wouldn't be purchasing. It would be actually just an agreement with Northern Maine Medical to keep some on hand here. So we wouldn't have to pay out of pocket to keep any. We would just have it. Now, we have EpiPens, but they're specific to be used to only the students that have a prescription for it. But if we have, let's say, a pre-K student gets stung by a wasp, they don't know that child is stung, allergic to a wasp, the nurse would be able to use Epi in that event to save a life.
So we can't do that right now unless they have a prescription?
Now, I think your nurses are bound by the
Good Samaritan, probably.
Samaritan. So I think they would be allowed to save a life based on, on their licensure, but we don't have a policy that says we do that.
And as far as Narcan, at this point, you have to wait for the ambulance to arrive.
Or EMS or police officers, right?
Again, if we'd have Narcan on hand, and I don't know that we do, I don't know that a nurse would watch somebody.
Right, but.
Right now, you don't have it on hand, is what she's asking.
We don't have, no, we don't have.
So I move to approve this as an emergency policy? Is that the right words?
Adoption of an emergency.
Yes.
I second.
Shirley seconds. Any discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor? Passes.
The next one is physicians' request for students to self-administer medication to school, as well as the physician's request for school personnel to administer medication in school. We just have a few small changes to this, and one of them is to add the route of medication to our current form. Our current forms do not currently ask for a route of medication, and then our current policy says we only have one school nurse on staff, which is not true. So the committee recommended that we put language that sometimes we have limited staffing. So those are the only small updates to that one, and we do not have to adopt this today as an emergency. That's just for first read for you to consider.
What do you mean by the route of medication?
Where do you give them the medication?
Okay.
I had to ask the same thing.
So they don't take the Ritalin nasally?
Right.
It's not okay.
Not everything is taken by mouth, apparently, so. The next one is KF-R, which is our lease agreement for the use of buildings. And what we're proposing in this one is a fee schedule change. This hasn't been updated since 2008. Inflation has gone up since 2008. We're not following the rate of inflation, but I think a small adjustment is in order. And then we've added a group number 5, which we don't currently have. And group number 5 would be considered the for-profit revenue producing. And we've limited that to only delivery of education for profit, something like a driver's education. It's education, but it's a business and they charge. So for that, it was the recommendation of the committee to make what we charge those groups to be determined based on how many students they have in the program, how often they use the facilities, that type of thing, in order to basically not give them the space for free, but work with somebody like a driver's ed, so that they at least pay their fair share for using our facilities. This has happened before as well with some adult ed dance programs and that type of thing. As long as it's education that we're providing, we're going to allow for it. We're not going to let just somebody come use our classroom to start, selling Bitcoin or something. But if it's education and it's, it's within the parameters, we'll make a determination on what to charge them. So those are the changes in that one.
Where does the money go with charging somebody?
my personal account. No. It all goes back to the general account, so the general budget.
Who's the "we" in the to be
And
determined?
school administration,
Okay.
yeah.
I just was envisioning it coming all back here.
No, you know, we would, essentially it would be me sitting down with whoever's making that request and kind of negotiating a little bit. One thing we don't want to do is, you know, turn somebody away from using our space. We want adult ed, driver's ed to be here. So setting a set fee that might make that not work out favorably was kind of problematic for us. Because one year, you know, Jenny might have 20 kids, but another year she might only have 8. And if we're charging the same amount for those type, you know, numbers, it's gonna make things difficult. The next one we have is CB, which is School Superintendent, formerly called School Qualifications and Duties. And we're just bringing that policy up to the current language that is provided by MSMA, Main School Management. And it does have that language that, you know, I will contact the chairperson and available board members before taking action for something that I'm going to make a decision on. So that has all been added as well. So please take a look at that one. And then CBI, evaluation of the superintendent. We talked a lot about what my evaluation looked like when I started here and how it's evolved over time, where this year was more of just a conversation. But essentially nothing gets put in my personnel file that says, you know, so we talked about, you know, what maybe that should look like. And so this is outlining that essentially you all would work with Toby on putting together your talking points about what you think, and then Toby would summarize that as board chair, and that would be the evidence that would come to the table when we're having my evaluation based on the feedback that you've all provided Toby in advance. And there's some other language in there that I'd like you to review as well.
Can I just
Sure.
share about some of the conversation? A few years ago, Ben provided, there's 10 things that he should be doing as a chair. And
Leadership standards.
Leadership standards, and he would provide evidence about each of the standards. And it was an impressive document. And we would review it, and then we would discuss. When this last year, it was kind of, we kind of went, yes, these are things that we know, but let's talk more. And so last year we did more of a talking review, but there wasn't anything substantial to then give Ben and say, this is what we want you to do next for this coming year. And so while we want it to be defined and helpful, we also talked about it being somewhat flexible. We had talked about adding a sentence in here, and I didn't read it really super closely, about there's some guidelines, but if these steps don't work and together we decide that we want to try something different, it allows us to do that. But what I liked about this was the superintendent does a self-evaluation, and then instead of being on the spot or having these, you know, potentially personal things or whatever, and kind of getting off track, we would do some homework ahead of time to do an evaluation with the chair, who would kind of take all of the stuff, kind of put it in a pot, and kind of come up with, here's the consensus of what the board is feeling, and then be able to use that to move forward with a review, as opposed to it being just random bits here and there. It seemed more unified. So I kind of like this, and this looks like a lot of words and kind of daunting, and a lot of steps, but I think it just gives the allowance to say Ben is allowed, or the superintendent is allowed to say their piece, the board is allowed to say their piece. It allows you to discuss things, you know, in executive without him, with him, so that you can come to something that says, here's how we think you did this last year, here's what we want you to do this year. So, it's a lot of words, but I think it's kind of cool.
It was well written.
Thank you, Sarah.
Did you see that spot in there where it says that, about being able to do something different? We had talked about that. Is it?
After you review it, let me know if
Okay.
you can. I'll go check my notes. The next thing you have is our organizational chart. I gave you the current organizational chart, CCE. And there are many missing positions, and a lot of changes have gone on since there. So the next one is the proposed organizational chart. One of the recommendations during our meeting was to kind of identify who's Valley Unified and who's SAD 27 with regards to administration. So I've done that color coding. And we also talked about the potential of making this an interactive document. So when it gets posted, actually having links so that you can click on custodians and see how many custodians we have. Maybe not naming them, but SAD 27 employs X amount of custodians, and maybe having a little bit of a job description. So the future of this may be interactive, depending on how creative we get. But in essence, I've gone over this with administration and said, are these our positions, and does this highlight, what the chain of command is, and it is, it's all reflected there, so please review that. CHA, Development of Administrative Procedures. It was formerly called Regulations, and it just gives a better description of, how the board delegates a responsibility for disseminating administrative procedures for the board. Administrative procedures can be something as simple as hiring practices. How do you go about hiring a new teacher? Well, we have an interview committee that's set up, we review applications. We don't take those procedures to the board, but at any time the board can say, hey, can we talk about these procedures? Because we'd like to know what that looks like. Or developing a bell schedule at a school level, or that type of thing. And then the last one is Sarah's favorite. School district annual report. This is actually something we have in policy. I didn't know about. Essentially, I'm supposed to provide the Department of Education, the commissioner, and you with an annual report at the end of the year that has some information. I'm glad I know that now. I do know that to the DOE, I do report all of these things, but they're now in separate reports. It's not like one report that I hand over to them. We do, an attendance report. We do attending pupils report. So we do all of the separate reports. But what I'd like to do for you all, and it says right now, for the first school board meeting of the year, I would provide you with a report of the previous year, and it would include the amount appropriated and expended for elementary and secondary education, the number of weeks schools were open, number of students, average attendance, yada, yada, yada. So you would have a report from me essentially at the end of the school year, beginning of the next school year, just highlighting some achievements, some accomplishments, and we would publish this on our school webpage so that the public would have access to it as well. I think it's kind of a nice way to wrap up the year and give you guys something that you can look forward to.
Very informative for the public as well. Yeah.
It would be, yes.
Yeah.
So I apologize for not knowing that I should have been doing this,
Job.
but I'm,
It's only been like, what, 14 years?
it's my 8th year. But I'm owning my mistakes, I'm sorry. So please take a look at those, and we'll discuss those first read policies next meeting as second reads. And thank you to Sarah and David for all of the work on the committee.
So I think we're at items of business.
Items of business, just a brief strategic planning update. We've had a lot going on over the past few weeks with our listening session. I know that Shannon was very busy last week trying to put together some last-minute parent and community sessions. So those all happened, and we closed out all of the listening sessions last week. Tomorrow, right, Mr. Doucette? Tomorrow, Jennifer will be here for some part two, what are we calling the part two?
The something session, a discussion session or something like that?
It's inviting anybody who participated in a listening session to now come together and have further conversations about what was discussed. And so we have tomorrow our student session set up and our staff session set up, and we're going to be looking to set up the parent community sessions when we know, when we have time for that as well. So things are coming together. All of that data is being collected, and we're anxious to start kind of diving into what folks are saying. I know that from staff who have participated, they really, really enjoyed. We had a group of school secretaries that were one of the sessions, and a couple of the ladies that work in central office said they really enjoyed it, and they felt like they had a say in, you know, what this is going to become, and really we're thankful for being part of it. So I'm hoping that we're capturing as many voices as possible. I know that there's a lot of work that's gone into trying to do so.
I think Susie Perry should be publicly thanked for the work that she did in securing a lot of the community members' participation.
Absolutely.
Absolutely incredible.
It's hard to get people to, you know, into your emailing and your texting and your calling, and when you can get a group of community members to come in for 5 o'clock for a listening session, I mean, that's pretty good. So you're right. Susie
Yeah,
did a wonderful job.
because I know how hard it was for me to get all of, I think, 8 or 9 people, and Susie had a nice big list going.
Yeah.
No, it was, and the sessions were, I participated in one, and it was really cool. The questions were very open-ended, and it provided really good discussion. I'm really excited about what we're going to hear.
Any questions on that? Under new business, we have no retirements to announce, no resignations, no transfers, no new hires. We currently have our opening for CHS special education teacher. That's to replace Mr. Cooper. And we also have a special education Ed Tech 3 position to replace Lynn Sear, who is retiring. Moving on in the agenda, we have an agenda item for 2022-23 budget. Annually, we ask the board to approve, for the current school year, we ask you to approve a transfer of no more than 5% between cost centers. What that is it allows Lucy to look at the current budget. If we've overexpended in some areas, we can transfer some money into that. Where we've underexpended in some areas, the law allows you to do so. It essentially allows for Lucy to have a balanced budget for auditing purposes at the end of the year. So this is just more of something we request every year so that Lucy can do her job.
Make a motion to approve the transfer of no more than 5% between cost centers for the current school year budget.
I'll second.
Any discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor? Passes. And budget workshop 3.
Speaking of Lucy's job,
You all have the sheets in front of you for the updated version. So on that first sheet, the changes, the first part of it was changes we had made up to the second draft. The green line are and below are the changes that we've made since the second draft. So the health insurance, we have 2 versions of health insurance. We have Anthem Blue Cross for teachers and professional and ed techs and whatnot, and Allegiant Care is the bus driver, custodian, secretary, the Teamsters, and their increase came in at 4%. We had 6% as a placeholder in the budget, so I was able to reduce their lines by 6%. Technology, we actually found that we had underestimated the pricing on one of the laptop leases, so I had to increase that line. The continuing ed, the Chippy Childcare Center, this is really the first year that we have an idea of how it's working and how the funds are coming in and whatnot. So it's operated, the daycare piece itself is operating as a self-sustaining fund. It really doesn't belong with the family literacy piece and the pieces that belong with the regular budget. So we're actually took the daycare expenses and the daycare revenues and set them aside in a separate fund. So we will have a clear picture of the question that you had asked, Toby, is it self-sustaining? So once we get a full year in and whatnot, we'll have, so some of these funds that were in the budget, I put to the other side. And then I found an error that I had made. I had only budgeted 50% for one staff member, and I've since corrected that. So total reductions of the expense side of the budget since the second draft reduced by almost 21,000. Our revised budget figure is 14,358,020, which is only a 4.9% increase from last year's budget. On the funding revenue side, I'm factoring in some solar energy rebates. We're not yet collecting them, but they're looking to be online in the fall. So this is my best estimate for a partial year. I'm just trying that. I corrected an error. I had a minus 5,000 for revenue, which should have been a plus 5,000, so that's a change of 10,000 increase. And then fewer funds needed for the continuing education itself. When I'm presenting it to the Department of Education, I have to account for all of the funds that make up the continuing ed piece separately. And when I'm looking at that pot of money, I actually had 36,000 that I needed to account differently. So the net effect of the local share for both of the reduction in expenses and the changes in revenue is a decrease of almost 36,000 to the locals. At second draft, we were going to the towns with a 1.05 mil increase. That's now down to 0.995, 95 or 96. It's rounding out. So that's where we are at today. The rest of the information is very similar to what you've seen before. Did you have any questions that you have when you reviewed it? So in that packet, you'll see this little sheet with almost peanut butter colored paper. So if you want to see the effect to each individual town, this is the most right-hand column. So the percent increase or decrease to the local town. So Fort Kent would have an increase of about 10.5% to what we asked in prior year. New Canada is a 6.8% increase. St. Francis is about a 10.1% increase. St. John Plantation, 8.5% increase, and Wallagrass, a 14.5% increase. The difference amongst the towns, the difference percentages is because their valuations is different, and it fluctuates from year to year. So they'll go up a little bit one year, they might go down a little bit the next year. So that's why each town is not exactly the same increase from prior year. Initially, when I first started looking at the budget and we looked at the first draft, I did let the towns know that we would be looking at a larger increase than normal. This actually is lower than what I anticipated we would get to. I was anticipating probably having to go to 18 to 20% to the towns, and I was very pleased to see that the average is about 10.6%.
Historically, what was it? I guess, do you know off the top of your head in the past 2 years?
Past 2 years, we've come in lower than that, but the past 2 years have also been very unusual years because we had COVID funds, and we weren't traveling as much. We didn't do as many sports. Now our kids are back to winning and traveling more. They get to enjoy the dramas and the music.
It's much cheaper when they lose.
I know. So this is actually, towards the end of last year and this year, we're back to being education. We're back to letting the kids do what they do best. So this budget is different in that respect. We always try to at least bring in less than 1 mil, and we've been able to do so. This was the first year that I was really scared we wouldn't be able to. And I'm pleasantly surprised that we've managed to do so.
Good work.
Is there any leftover COVID money relief?
We have some left over, but it's very specific. The COVID funds that are left is in the third ESSER fund, and it's specific to learning recovery. So the kids that, the loss in learning that the funds that we have are targeted specifically for that. We had some projects that are pretty much completed. We're tying up the loose ends with those funds. By the end of this year, they'll be done.
It's a lot of programs for like vacation school, so we'll have February vacation school, April vacation school, we'll have summer school, extended summer school services, we'll have after school tutorial, that's all tied to that learning loss. Plus we have the student-centered coach position at Fort Kent Elementary that's tied to it.
Now, is travel included in that? So like St. Francis
Yep.
or Allagash or any of that needs that extra time frame, that's all included with that, so bus will pick up
Yep.
them?
We included transportation as well.
We can tie it to learning loss due to COVID or COVID era. That's pretty much it. We can use those funds to cover it.
What happens to the funds remaining, and I'm sorry if this sounds ignorant, but the funds remaining at the end of the year, what happens to those?
The state law basically tells me that whatever's remaining, there's a 3 to 5% that I'm allowed to go over, or not go over the budget, but have remaining. Anything in excess of that, I have 3 years to apply it to the next 3 years' budget to reduce local taxes. So in the long sheet that you have, the only legal size sheet, the very first line at the top is the budget carry forward and how I'm applying it. So I wait until we see our audit report, and I use them, I make sure that I don't use it all in 1 year, because that'll cause us issues the next year. So we use like a 3-year, not path, but 3-year plan to use up the carry forward funds. We can set aside some in reserves. It requires a board vote. It requires a referendum vote to set aside reserve funds. In the warrants, in the last few years, we've had, the Department of Education has given us funds in addition after we've gone through a referendum. So now, in one of the warrants, I include the general disclaimer that says, if we should get additional funds, we set aside funds in a reserve fund and lower tax assessment. So I'm doing that every year, so it covers me in the event that we get this little cash flow from the department.
We've had that happen a couple of times, right?
Yep.
Question. My memory's bad. The heating system, did we ever get to the bottom of all that? And there was a loan and
Yep.
stuff.
We must be nearing the end of the loan. Can't remember how many years.
Okay.
We are tied with the University of Maine system with a heating plant. They charge us 40% of the total cost of the items that they purchase, the pellets. That is in line with what we had agreed on.
Okay.
So regardless of if they add more buildings, then we'll have to renegotiate, but I don't think they're going to be adding any more.
Have we done an audit of use or something and loss?
Well, we were having issues with inconsistent billing, right?
right.
So, you know, comparing January this year to January last year, we ended up getting meters on both ends that kind of verified what's getting put out and what's being received here.
Okay.
So that's
It's resolved.
Yep. For those who are not aware, is the heating plant that heats the UMFK buildings is piped underground, and it heats this building, and it also heats the Fort Kent Elementary with pellets. We also have our boilers that we have to use in emergency situations or in the shoulder seasons where the heating plant may not be quite sufficient. We can fire up our oil boilers and have sufficient heat. The heating is much better than it was when I first started here. We had steam heat. This is much, it's more even.
Anybody else have any more questions?
So this is my first big dive getting in to look at the prices and the look of all the numbers compared to the last time I was here and stuff. And would you be able to explain in depth of what is being purchased with the items on this list?
Yeah, I can. The quickest way to go about that is just the one that has the most pink on it, so one sheet, and it's called the summary by categories of expense. So what I've done here is, one of the sheets that you have is by cost center. So the Department of Education requires me to report by cost center. So the first is regular instruction, and that's basically what happens in the classroom. So your salaries, your benefits, so I report by the 11 cost centers, but then I also do this summary so that we can capture all salaries, regardless of where they are in the budget, all the health insurance, regardless of where. So if you look at the first 4 or 5 lines, 79% of the budget is salaries and expense. Salaries and health insurance and FICA and main person retirement system. So that's where the majority of it is going. The travel, professional, and room and board, that is if you have to travel for PD. Very few PD opportunities come to us from the state of Maine. They don't come to Fort Kent. We go to Bangor, we go to Augusta, we go to Portland, and on a very rare occasion, we travel to state or national conferences. Although the cost of professional development for teachers who we have an additional federal funding source to pay for teachers' professional development. So that's not factored in here, it's over and above. Utilities, that's your electricity, your water and sewer, so those are the costs. And your utilities, your heating, your oil, your diesel they're all showing cost increases. And they range from anywhere from 8 to 10% to 15 to 20 to 30%.
And Kelly, you see the, I'm going back to the professional development line, you'll see the increase of 1850. People weren't traveling as much when COVID was here. We just didn't have as many opportunities, so that's slowly ticking up again.
Right.
That's why you're seeing that increase.
What COVID did offer us is the Zoom and the Teams, and however, that's not a replacement for meeting in person.
Right.
There's a lot of value in sitting next to your coworker who works in a different district and has best practices, and you can't really do that via Zoom. Repayment of a loan is the school revolving renovations funds that we have. We have some that are at the tail end for the air exchange and the heating plant. I think next year, the year after, is the last year for that payment. It's usually a 10-year payment. Part of it was 15 years. We have a new one for the vestibule and safety in the safety, is it cameras?
There are cameras.
Cameras in vestibule. Materials and supplies is, when you think of what's in the classroom, and if we have 40 classrooms, if we don't replace any equipment, even if I replace only one classroom of equipment per year, it'll take me 40 years to outfit my classrooms. So every year I do leave some equipment, some furniture in there just to deal with that so that we're not all hit with that in 1 year.
That was the biggest rises that I saw, was the equipment and furniture. Like,
Yep,
what kind of
and
furnitures are you purchasing for the costs to?
This year, it's actually not the furniture, it's band instruments that we're looking to build up the middle school band. And we've got about, I think it's 18,000 of instruments, We have some instruments for the high school band, but now we're looking to bring it to the middle school. The equipment and furniture, the laptop lease, every year, we have one-to-one technology in this district at the lower grades, pre-K, maybe iPads, but from grades 2 and up, we have one-to-one laptops. Some stay in the classroom, some stay at school, some actually go home. That is actually what saved us when we kicked into gear with COVID. Had we not had this much investment in technology, we would not have been able to do the response from being out for 2 days and being on Zoom by the Wednesday after.
Right.
So but in order to replenish your laptops and your one-to-one equipment, it requires that we have a plan, and we have 3 or 4 lease groups of laptops and equipment that we rotate. So we always have. So this year, that some of that Milty laptop lease, Milty is Maine Learning Technology Initiative. What you'll also see on the revenue side is there is a revenue stream to offset some of that costs. It is 33, almost 34,000 will come from the Department of Education this year to offset some of this equipment. Prior to this year or last year, the Department of Education actually gave us the laptops for grades 7 and 8 for free, and we didn't have to pay anything. Now, it's because some districts wanted Macintosh, some districts wanted HP, some districts wanted Chromebooks, they basically said, fine, we'll give you the money, you purchase what you want with them. So now you'll see the expense for our laptops, but you'll also see a revenue stream to offset it. Meals, lodging, and transportation, that's usually to do with our co-curricular and our extracurricular trips. Dues in the same line below that, so student trips and PVC sports. Can you explain that one?
Yeah, so next year, the Aroostook County League for sports is having a number of schools decide if they want to move soccer programs to 8-person soccer, because there are so many schools that can't field 11-person soccer. So a lot of our competition in the past will now have 8-sided soccer. We have no desire to go down to 8-sided soccer. We can probably field 5 or 6 soccer teams in any given year. So in order to find teams that we're going to be able to play on full-sided soccer, we may have to extend our travel outside of Aroostook County, such as Washington Academy and Machias, Calais. So looking to extend some of our games down there. That's still to be determined, but in order to be ready to have those games, we needed to bump up the transportation and the due fees for different leagues.
Some of those student trips are also for your drama club, your math club, it's your college visits for kids, it's your, it's anything to do with kids. We found that if you don't provide the variety, you're not going to get every child in school. Some kids come to school specifically for these things. The bonus is we get to teach them things. Hopefully.
That's an interesting way to look at it.
Yeah. Student contracted services, that's typically attached to the special ed budget pieces of it, so your psych, your occupational therapy, your physical therapy, your speech, those kinds of services. Career and Technical Education Center, that's the services that are provided at the CTE in St. John Valley Tech in Frenchville. Previously, we used to have all the costs in our budget, and the funding would come as well. We would then pay the bill to St. John Valley Tech. In the past 5 or 6 years, the Department of Education has changed that, so they now get their own ED 279, their own funding. This line is only in the event that they would need funds over and above what is provided, and so far they have not needed anything extra. Equipment repair and maintenance, that is to maintain what we have. And then repair and maintenance to the buildings. Built into the repair and maintenance is a $100,000 fund. We call it the 100 Fund. That's what our very nice Director of Transportation and Facilities gets to spend to fix things. We used to identify the projects, but we found that it's difficult to attack the ones that you needed to at the time frame that you can get to them. And now with the cost increases and the delivery schedules, we found that it's much easier to just give him a pot of money and he can tackle what he can at the time that he can. And 100,000 is not enough. We could use probably 10 times that much. We were able to tackle some projects with the ESSER funds and the federal funds that we got during COVID, but it still is not quite. We need to attack some every year. We have a contingency fund of 70,000, and that is if the boiler breaks, if the roof leaks, if the windows break and a wall falls in, that's the funds that will get tapped into. Conference, workshops, and professional development, and tuition. Tuition is the courses that teachers or staff take that we reimburse the tuition for. So if we have teachers that are working towards, or they have a bachelor's degree, they're working towards a master's degree, this is the line. It also deals with the conference workshops that we may have. We also have teams or leadership teams that we pay out of this line, so they have a stipend to be on a team and provide that service.
Lucy, are you familiar with the Alphond Workforce Grant that reimburses, you know what I'm talking about?
Yep.
Are you all, is the district eligible for that? Because I know we've used some, like I personally took a class and then they reimbursed for it.
I know that Kevin Lavoie at the Tech Center experimented with it this year, and he was going to talk to me a little bit more about how that all works, but he was able to tap into it.
All right.
At the Tech Center.
Because this year, they're reimbursing up to half. I think it's only like $600 or maybe $1,200, but it might. I'll send you the links, and then between you and Kevin, it might be something that can offset a little bit at least.
Yep, absolutely. Food and supplies for school lunch. The school lunch, this is the second year that it's, well, during COVID, the meals were provided to students at no cost. It's now the state law. What that means for us is not only do we feed the kids that we used to, we now feed more kids, because now the parents are actually taking advantage of it, and they should, thankfully. The two things that kind of affect it is the cost of the food and the supplies as well. So you'll see a line not only for the cost, but also that we're providing more meals. And it also includes summer meal program.
Okay, yeah, I'm trying to make sense of that. So it's state law now that we can't charge families for food?
Correct. We charge the adults, so if I decide to have a meal here at school, I have to pay. And they determine what the rate is.
They being the state?
They being the state, correct.
But the children don't?
The children do not pay. No. They would pay if they want like a second meal, or if they want an a la carte item that's not included. Our meals have to follow certain guidelines, so you have to have a fruit and a vegetable and certain size grain, or the menu for the week has to have certain guidelines. So as long as the meal fits that guideline, we're reimbursed by the state for an average price of the meal.
Okay.
And then if they want anything over and above, then they would have to pay.
Our subsidy side of that is increasing every year too, right?
Our subsidy is increasing, but it will decrease a little bit this summer. Actually effective July 1st, because they're going back to the pre-COVID reimbursement rates. Okay. They had upped the rates during COVID. They are now going to be decreasing by, I think one meal is 15 cents less, and the lunch meal will be 40 cents less per meal.
So where's the offset, I guess, as far as what the state's paying us for the meals?
Yep, so at the bottom of the sheet, you'll have the state revenue, and there's a lunch up to the summer. So we make about 14,000 for the summer meal.
Got it.
And the school year, I'm estimating about 486,000.
And so the numbers on this sheet is our cost above that reimbursement?
No, that's the total cost of the program.
Okay.
But what that sheet is by grouping. The true cost of the program, if you look at the summary by 11 cost centers, the third one to the bottom, the total cost of what I'm anticipating this year is about 730,000, which is about a 12% increase from prior year. The state we'll get about 500,000 from the state. We have no carry forward that I planned, and our local cost for that total is about 218,000 is what we're asking from the locals.
So
That's
this-
above and beyond the 486 that we're getting from the state.
Correct.
Or we're anticipating.
Correct.
And that's mostly for staffing and, staff benefits, salaries.
Oh,
those type
that's
of things.
included in there?
That's
I
included.
thought it was just
Oh,
food.
no,
I was
no,
like,
no.
what are we
It's
feeding?
all costs, yeah.
All costs for the program.
Yeah, I have to capture all costs, so that's
Okay.
your, the salaries, the health insurance for the people who work there. It's for the, it's not for the heat and electric for that building, but any equipment that we have to purchase, any supplies. The fee for the inspection of the kitchen, anything
Yeah.
that I can tie to that,
Got it.
to that program.
And we like to remind the public that we're the largest kitchen in town. We're the two largest kitchens in town, we're feeding the most mouths. And that's a big deal.
And the last line of expenses, vehicles, so that's 106,000 is what we anticipate will cost for one bus. Each year, in order to maintain our fleet, and actually, we would need to buy a bus and a third in order to keep our fleet in the replenishment plan. This is for one bus, and is it a special,
No, not special, it's a route bus this year.
it's a route
It's a
bus?
regular route bus, 77 passenger.
So for total budget of 14,358,000. Is there further clarification that you wanted to tell?
Oh, that's good.
Because I can go through the 14 pages.
No. The biggest things were like the equipment and furniture, like, what are we
Yeah.
spending so much money on furniture? Like, what, are tables all breaking, or like,
We were
Those were
actually
the
able
biggest-
to address a lot of the desks and chairs by using the ESSER funds. One of the grants allowed us to purchase stand-up desks for our staff. So that went a long ways to replacing desks that I think were original to the building, if not close.
We replaced a lot of classrooms, tables.
Classroom tables and
A lot of supplies.
the way of teaching since 1969 has changed a little bit, so that you're working in teams, you're working in groups, you're working.
A lot has changed. So on that, though, with the materials and furniture, you said that the majority of that expenditure is gonna be
Band instruments.
band instruments. Now, are the students gonna be able to bring that home? Like, what, how? I don't know. And the reason why I ask is because, when I was in band back in the day, like, we had to pay a lease for that, and like, you know what I mean, purchase our own, and I understand that that's not every family can do that,
Right.
but I mean,
These are more the big ticket items that you would not ask a family to purchase if a kid wants to play tuba. You're not asking a family to, buy an $18,000 tuba.
right,
But as we build this, you're right. When students say, I want to play the flute, the trumpet, the clarinet, families are going to be tasked with leasing those
Okay.
costs for that. This is just to build, we need some drum sets.
Yeah.
We need those big ticket items that exist in a band that we just don't have right now,
okay,
that foundational stuff.
all right, I was just wondering.
But we're not going to,
But
the
we
school
can't
district
do-
is not going to fund all band instruments for all students. That's just not fiscally
Can't,
possible.
can't do it, yeah, okay. Crazy.
Good work, Lucy.
Thank you, you did a great job.
So, tonight, normally, the board approves the budget number, and then at a different meeting, we sign the warrants. And previously, warrants needed to be signed, I had a stack. and
Yeah.
I have good news. When I checked with our legal rep, and I said, is there any way that we can do away with having to sign so many papers? And he said, yes. He said, the board can sign one for each town. We can make copies at the central office and certify them as true copies. So we'll do the heavy lifting for the signing, and the board can just sign. So I've got the warrants ready tonight. If you are ready to approve the budget as is, then we'd be good to go. If you do not want to approve the budget or want to change numbers, then we'll do the warrants on a different day.
I'll motion to approve the 2023-24 budget as presented and to set the budget hearing date for Monday, May 22, 2023.
I'll second.
Any discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor? Yes.
Okay, so, thank you very much, appreciate that. In order to do the warrants, I'm gonna, what's highlighted there, if you can either read just a little yellow part, and I'll give everybody a copy, they can read the rest.
Okay.
Or you can read the whole thing.
Or you can assign it to somebody else to read, because you're the chairman.
So this is the motion
Advice.
required.
I don't get to read stuff anymore, I'll take it when I get it. I move that the vote entitled, quote, "A vote to call and approve the warrants for the budget meeting and the validation referendum and to authorize the notice of amounts adopted," end quote, "be approved in form presented to this meeting, and that a copy of said vote be included with the minutes of this meeting."
Somebody would need to second that.
I'll second.
Any discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor?
So the sheets that I give you, if you sign on line one, always sign on line one and pass it down. That's as much as you get to sign.
So we don't get coffee some morning to do this?
You can come and we'll go over the reports of other day.
So I'm signing the
Yeah,
next line.
just sign
down.
line 2 and keep going.
Yeah, that was fun.
I don't think we actually got coffee though.
No, but we brought our own. It was fun.
I did not want us to go anything, had to start over.
Imagine that.
My daughter's in kindergarten, I bring her in with me, give her a piece of paper to sign with me.
That's
Why does this one feel so thick?
Some are just a little bit different.
Oh,
All right,
I'm getting further and further
You're
every
doing
time I
s-
kick it towards you.
that's.
Yeah, I can.
Good.
On this, can we change Chippy Center to the
Yes.
early learning thingy?
Yes.
really anything.
I feel like your name's longer than mine and you're just like.
Yeah, but look, can you even read it? I bet you can read
great.
yours.
Nice. Touchdown. Barry used to give me crap because you could actually read mine.
You're the only one who reads, right?
Yeah,
I can't.
Yours is pretty.
Not. I can't not.
Have you seen Toby's? It's awesome.
Yes.
Who really was that?
Plausible deniability. You approve this budget, I don't know who's handwriting that, that must be Dave Susie.
Then that's it.
Thank you, Lucy.
We need a
System
motion
is-
to adjourn.
Oh,
I motion to adjourn.
I'll second.